What do you steal? She has good taste, you think? Oh, Family Feud, okay. It hasn't happened for a while, but I used to get some complaints about my language, about some of the way I present ideas. And so then I would be investigated about, I think these days you have to be very careful because you have a lot of people who come to your class, or into your space, and kind of broken, and you have no idea what their background is, and if you happen to be somewhat of a creative thinker, and I hope that I am to some extent, sometimes conversation and discussion can go to places that could make some people uncomfortable. And so just in case someone makes something up, I always have documents, which is helpful. We used to talk about sex quite often, only because I'm not quite sure why. For many years, I think, for maybe a decade or so. First because Rumi has a book, I think it's book number 5, that uses that particular human activity as in a lot of different stories for spiritual and intellectual growth. And because Westerners are not familiar with those kind of concepts, they always take it to the wrong place. And given that 95.8% of my students are addicted to pornography, it makes it somewhat dicey, talking about this stuff. Add to it that there is a huge taboo about sex, even though it is part of the creative arts, which she is majoring in. I'm sorry, it was creative writing, but it's the same thing. So, yeah. And the other thing about recording has to do really with something we talked about, I think, last week. I don't know if we talked about this when we were talking about Gilgamesh, but the idea that once you die, sure, you have some friends and family members, they'll come to your grave, they'll cry, maybe, if you're lucky, if you've left a good impression on them, if they care for you, love you a little bit. But life is quite distracting, so after a while you'll be forgotten. And, it's to some extent it's a sad thing to have lived some 50, 60, 70 years. I'm not talking about young kids, should an event happen in the past, but for someone like me who's got some age on them, and you happen to kind of reflect a bit about death, mortality, about the meaning of life, how it was lived, you'd like to leave something behind. And to some extent, it is really the fear of being forgotten. The Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran had once remarked that human beings are like, when you walk near the ocean on the sand, you walk on the sand and you look behind you and the footprints are there. And you say, yes, they're never going to go anywhere. And the waves come and they recede and all of a sudden the footprints disappear as if they never existed. And I'd argue that most people are like that. We come into this world and a few minutes later we're gone. And no one remembers us. And rightly so, because we don't really do much with our lives. And the circle of friends that we have, they're kind of useless as well. So, these recordings hopefully will serve as my desire for immortality, if you will. Yeah. Every time my brother calls me, we have a conversation, he says, Amir, this is you're not doing your YouTube channel the right way. I said, first of all, Iraj, I'm not doing this at all. It's Cassie who does it. Well, you have to like be controversial. So I said, why? Well, don't you want to like get a lot of clicks? He said, no, it's not for that. So he's very business minded. He's always been. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyone else before we talk about Maggie? You sure? Wolf? Really? Not yet? Yeah, Shantae.
Is arrogance okay? And to what, if it's not okay, to what extent is it bad?
So there is good pride that can lead to, I don't know if you can call it arrogance, but let's just do that for now. And then there is false pride. I remember when I was first hired at Laney, my dean back then was Elnora Webb, a very nice woman, very attractive, African American, had gone through some traumas in her life, but managed to get herself to Berkeley, get a PhD, start as a faculty, become a dean, become a vice president, become the president of Laney College. And I think she was a chancellor or maybe a vice chancellor for a couple of years, and then she, went away. Maybe she's retired now. The one day she calls me to her office and says, we're going to have an event this Saturday and you have to be there. Cornel West is going to be the speaker. I had no idea who he was. So I went home and I, YouTubed him, and I really liked him. And so I remember sitting with him at the table where people were coming to talk to him, have him sign their books. I never introduced myself. This is Amir Sabzavari, the department chair, Philosophy Humanities. I didn't really say much. I felt that would be profoundly arrogant. This is a man who is, 10, 15 years older than I am. He's been very accomplished. Hello. And he's been to places that I will never go, can't even imagine. Very eloquent, very profound, very deep, very passionate. So I kept my mouth shut during the, entire 4 or 5 hours that we were there. And then, of course, when he went to give a talk on the stage, man, it was amazing. It's kind of like what Plato would say, you grow wings and you soar towards the heavens. That's how passionate he was. I think you have to have a good amount of awareness about you and where exactly you are. Have you heard of Peter Booker or Lang Lang? Okay, so these are pianists. Imagine you play the piano, and you have no idea who Lang Lang is, but he sits and he plays the piano. No, you're older. You should speak where you are. You, the younger, you just... And so let's say he sits and begins to play the piano. Now, to your credit, you've made some sacrifices. You've been playing for about 5 years or so, but you're not that good, but you're good amongst your own peers. But when it comes to professionals, you're way behind. So after him playing and you kind of sitting back and, as I said, he plays and you grow wings and you fly up. And then he stops. And then someone says, oh, did you know that Shantae also plays the piano? Now, in the presence of Lang Lang, if you have any sense about it, you say, no. You exercise a good amount of humility. Say, I'm not very good. I can't play. My fingers are arthritis and all that. But given who and what Lang Lang is, he'll probably look at it and say, Shantae, listen. Music is universal. We're all at different stages of our own, evolution or perfection. Why don't you play? Let me enjoy you. Now you kind of walk towards the piano very humbly, very gently. You know that you're not going to match what you just heard, from Lang Lang. False humility has to do with, let's just say, you knowing that Socrates or Malcolm X or someone that you idolize is sitting next to you, and let's just say they happen to be a very, very deep thinker, like Angela Davis. And they ask a question about, I don't know, something. And all of a sudden, Angela's hand remains down, but your hand goes up. Now, you've only read one book. Angela Davis is a living book. Her hand remains down, yours go up because you think you actually have something to say. So that becomes false pride, that you assume that you're qualified when in fact you're not. But given the way this culture is, TikTok, YouTube, and all the stuff where people go and just put themselves on there, the assumption is, yes, I have something to offer humanity, so here it is. And even though it's all garbage. The other pride that perhaps you want to exercise is go practice piano for about 20 years, and when it comes time for you to play the piano, go towards it very humbly. And when you're done, people are going to applaud you. Stand up, bow. Be very proud of what you've accomplished because you actually made 20 years of sacrifice. Not very many people in their entire life make such sacrifices. We're like leaves in the hands of wind. Wherever the wind blows, we just go with it. There are very, very rare number of people who are, first, they find their passion before they're way too old, where their body just fails them, where they find what their passion is at a very young age, and they have the resources, the support system to kind of make the sacrifices, and there are people in their life who push them towards a particular craft. And by the time they're like 19 or 20, they're great. There was this 10-year-old a couple days ago who had played Hikaru. I don't know if you know him. Hikaru is a chess player. He's, I think, number 2 in the world. This 10-year-old has beaten him from India 3 times in a row. Amazing. And it's such you have to envy such people, and you have to be so angry at life for being so unjust. Most of us have to spend really 40, 50 years of our lives, and oftentimes with a good amount of regret, to figure out what we're good at, only to realize you're not really good at anything. And then you have a kid. He comes out of his mom, and he doesn't say milk, he doesn't say like spank me or give me a hug, he says, where's the chessboard? Who does that? Why is life like that? And the truth is, that's just the way life is. And you have to just accept the injustice of life, very much like every other injustice that's out there. So, there is a Sufi Persian poet, his name is Sa'di. Have you heard of him? He's really no good. Beautiful mind, 13th century or so. He has this analogy between arrogance and humility. He says, walk around and try to look for a very young apple tree. And you see the apple tree standing straight as if it's accomplished anything, And then find an apple tree that has like 1,000 apples stuck to its branches, and you realize the branches are all bent. That's a sign of humility, that it bears all these apples, and yet it's hunched back. That's a nice way to be. To have, But you really have to kind of know yourself a little bit. You have to be really good at a certain craft. And then you have to care for your craft. Because your craft can either be for a one-night stand, i.e. a prostitute, or it could be reserved. When you work really hard for something, you're going to be very stingy with it. You're not going to just give it away easily. You know, it's kind of like, and women do this really well, especially after a breakup or a divorce. They're not going to share their bodies. I mean, I understand the loneliness and the anger, and that sometimes you need to be intimate with someone to just release some poison from your system. I understand that. But for the most part, women kind of go into seclusion. They go into this cave and they say, no more. You know, I'm just going to kind of purify myself, baptize myself by reflecting, by thinking, by just simmering in anger. Men unfortunately don't have that particular quality to them. They just remain immature until the day they die. Unfortunately. Good luck, since you're getting married. You have to leave?
Yeah, I agree.
Is it the people here?
Yes, everybody. Before I said
People are giving a mic.
we're gonna wait too long.
Okay, good luck. It's good to see you. Take care of yourself. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Do people appreciate things when they're free?
That's a really, 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 really good question. Children, forgive me. So, first, they have no concept of what it means to be a parent. Whether you planned the pregnancy or not, that's besides the point. Once the kid comes out, you just feel the obligation. Okay. Now, up to the age, most children up to the age of 40, maybe 50, they have no idea what it means to be a parent. Okay. And the sort of sacrifices that parents make. It's an example I often give, that imagine a young man going to a party or a gathering, and they are guided, of course, by their senses. They see a young, attractive woman out there, and they're just assuming that they're both heteros. And so the young man, because of his attraction to this young woman, approaches her. Not because he knows her soul, not because he knows her background. The senses say, oh, wow, go over there, you know. And so they say hello to each other, and they appreciate the tone of, the voice, what little story they have to share. And then whatever you're attracted to, eventually you want to touch and taste and hear and all that stuff. So then comes the sex. Now, is the young 18-year-old ready to be a father to a young 17 or 18-year-old? The answer is no. People can have sex. Are they ready for parenting? The answer is no. But nevertheless, things happen, especially these days. So the woman gets pregnant, this young woman, knocks on this guy's door after like 6 months and says, oh, remember me? He says, no, I have no idea who you are. I was drunk at the time, or high, or whatever. He says, well, my name is Jackie, or Joey, or whatever. You're the father. And of course, men are going to say, no, are you sure? Eventually, of course. So comes a fantasy now. Let's just say that he came from a broken home, and all of a sudden, now that he hears that he's going to be a father, he says, I'm going to be the best father this world has ever seen. So him and his companion go to Target and steal beds and diapers, or maybe just buy them. Now, he doesn't know anything about parenthood. Okay. He thinks that just making $100 a week, it's enough to make a life. And soon he comes to realize diapers are really expensive. Formula is really expensive. You need a nice place. Food is expensive. Everything is expensive. And so despite wanting to be the best companion and best father, he comes to realize, well, the politics of life is a little different. So he goes out there and works. Now add to this story the fact that he didn't really finish school, And so the best he can do, maybe in and out, maybe Home Depot, if he wants to kind of work in these particular professions. Now, making $20 an hour is going to be very, very difficult to kind of survive a life into the 21st century in California, okay? So initially he thinks it's going to be a wonderful life. After about 8 to 10 hours of work, he comes home, the wife is exhausted, the kid is just screaming, you know. And some kids come out hot, fire, they're always screaming, and some kids just come out like water. They're always like sleep, you know, or drugged up, temperamentally, I mean. And he just wants, you know, a few hours of peace and quiet, but that's not what life does. So all of a sudden frustration comes over, all of a sudden anger comes about, rage comes about, he begins to scream and shout. He had promised not to smoke, not to drink, but you know, the troubles of life of way, way too much. So he goes, sits in the car and smokes, maybe drinks, or maybe he goes to some bar and just gets to a fight, whatever the case may be. Now, as a newborn, you have no idea any of this has happened. You don't know that your parents met accidentally. You don't know that your father really, I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to Judaism, which is honor thy parents. You can't really honor thy parents unless you honor who and what they are and the sacrifices that they've made. That's the only way you can respect anything, you know. And to respect anything, you need to have a relationship, and that relationship needs to be intimate. You know, it's a little too late when your dad dies and you say, oh, I wish I could have spent a few hours with him. You know, that's a great place to be still. But if you really wanted to appreciate your father, you should have spent some time with him while he was there. Now, what little money this guy and this family makes, this man and woman, they spend it on this kid. Does he appreciate the diapers? No. Does he appreciate the formula? No. Does he appreciate the fact that the mother can't rest or sleep at night because the kid just keeps screaming and pooping? The answer is no. Does the child understand that late at night the mother, you know, is awake thinking about her life, that maybe this was a mistake that you can't go back and change, that this was the wrong guy? She can't do that either. Like a sage, she suffers in silence. At least that's how some people are. Some people scream and shout and fight. But some people also say, you know what, this is what fate has given me. It's really tragic and unfortunate, but what else can I do? You know, I can scream or I can just mind my business, do what I need to do to protect my own health and my child's health, because this guy sucks. So, the kid doesn't understand the frustration that's running so heavily in this man's vein. He just wanted sex, not to be a father. She just wanted sex, not to be a mother. And yet, here we are. Now, what's going to happen, and I know I'm diverging from the original question, perhaps the response to it. What's going to happen is eventually, you know, this relationship was not built on reflection or understanding, it was built on sex, colors. And this particular color, i.e. sex, in the hands of time eventually disappears. It means nothing after a while, because the politics of life are way, way too powerful for the 10-minute sex that you're going to be having with this companion for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months. It will no longer make any sense or even bring you joy because you fight too much. Life is far too frustrating. And so eventually this man and woman separate and go their own separate ways, okay? Now, if Freud is right, and if most of the psychologists under the sun are right in suggesting that the years where a kid's psyche is formed, you know, like when you pour concrete inside this form, is about 0 to about 6 or 7. If that foundation is cracked, it's never going to get fixed unless you do a lot of hard work on yourself. Okay? Now, as a kid, you have no idea why your parents have separated. You can't really appreciate what they went through because you have zero understanding of it. You have zero understanding of the intensity and the power of sex. You have zero understanding of what they call attraction. You have zero understanding of compromise, how these two people really tried to make it work. It just didn't happen. You have zero understanding as to why your father, who's not talking to you or far away from you, went inside the car and smoked and drank and had fits of anger. You have no idea what any of those things are. As a kid, all you want is love, faith, stability, a foundation, a place you can go and call home. Okay. So up to this point, this kid has zero appreciation for any of this. All you have is a 2-year-old with a good amount of brokenness and pain inside him or her. Okay. Now that he or she has lost faith and trust and to some extent love, they kind of walk into life making sure that they're going to keep themselves in poverty. They're not going to give themselves to anyone. They're not going to be intimate. Physically, they may be intimate, but emotionally, intellectually, never. Okay? Because they don't want to be hurt. And that's the key. Remember, we're not the sort of animals that enjoy pain. We'll do whatever we can to walk away from pain and hurt and put our heads like an ostrich. Dig a hole, put our heads in it, it's dark, you can't see anything. And as long as you can't see, things out there, predators don't exist. History don't exist. So, what's going to happen is that this, once a child, now a grown young man, let's say 20, has learned to kind of use people like trash, okay? That's the only way he can survive. Because as human beings, you want intimacy. I mean, you want to talk to someone, you want to have friends, you want to have sex, but you can only take yourself up to a certain line. When intimacy becomes a little too much, and when you realize you're becoming a bit more dependent, you're losing power. Which means that should the other person leave, you'll be devastated. The way your mom left, the way your dad left. So you try to protect yourself. There's a reason why we do all this stuff. And it's reasonable that why we do them, okay? There comes a point where this 25, 26, 30-year-old now has a fling. We haven't even talked about the loneliness that this kid suffers from and his gravitation towards alcohol and drugs and porn and the rest of it, maybe fighting and ganging and all that. Eventually, he has sex with someone and now he's a father. Now, he's going to probably repeat the same mistakes that his father made. And once in a while, he's going to blame his parents for the way he is and who he has become. And to some extent, it is true. They are to be blamed. But unlike his father, because he wants to be a good dad, because to some extent he is self-reflective, and he doesn't want to be like his own father, he does what his companion asks him. He sobers up, he goes through anger management training, and there is this breakthrough, this moment of opening, where he says, did my father go through all of this? And then even though he hasn't spoken to his father for about 20 years, he finds him on Google, knocks on his door and says, Dad, remember me? And of course, by this time, let's make the story really spicy. His father has stage 4 cancer, he's about to die, and the moment he sees his son, he just tears up, he cries. Beautiful. And the kid looks at the father and says, I forgive you. I understand. I appreciate everything you went through. But this particular appreciation has to do with the fact that this kid went through all the things his father went through, but unlike his father, who took a different path, he sobered up. He went to AA. He went to school. He got his degrees. He got a good job. But he does understand what it means to be in a marriage or a relationship that you don't want to be. He understands that life imposes things on you that you don't want. Unlike his father, he was temperamentally perhaps, he he was able to carry that cross, the burden that all of us in this class have a cross to carry. You know, different intensity, different shapes, different shades. So yeah, only then does he get to appreciate. My father is 90, and he just came back from Europe. I appreciate any human being, not just my father, who happens to be about 80, 90, and is able to travel. And despite having perhaps a good amount of physical problems, never speak about them. Being very reserved. You know, I mean, it's profoundly arrogant for you to sit amongst people and all of a sudden just talk about your own pains and aches. You know. So, the problem with, going back to your question, do people appreciate if things are free? Like most things under the sun, a good amount of time needs to be passed for you to appreciate anything. It doesn't even matter if you've made some sacrifices. Imagine if every time you come to this class you pay me $10. Okay, $20 or $30. Or let's just say I'm a leader of a cult. Okay, I take advantage of every aspect of who and what you are. Okay. I make you a bit more reflective, a bit more mindful, a bit more aware. Then everything has a window. So our relationship has a window, and the window closes. And now there's a good amount of resentment, anger, because you came to me when you were 18 and now you're 35. No education, no money, no house, no companion, you have nothing. All you have is a brain, a mind that can think really, really well about life. Okay? It doesn't mean that you can inject yourself in life and live it. You just know how to stand far away from life, look at it and say, yuck. At most things that life offers. Then you go into the world, you go to school, you make some, you get a degree, you make some money after getting a job. And then now you're 65. And you think back about the 20 years that you spent with me. And you say, if it wasn't for those 20 years, I wouldn't be here now. And the point I'm trying to make is that none of us can really appreciate anything until it's gone. And that's one of the awful things about just being a human being. You know, especially kids and parents. You know, I don't know how, and forgive me, I know that all of us are parents and they've gone through a great deal. I can't understand, fathom, why my mom would leave her father, her mother, her brothers to come to America for us, 13, 14-year-old kids. Hello, Kendra. How are you? And I will never understand it unless I myself send my kids away and then go visit them. And look, there is the appreciation of the intellect where you sit, you can think, process things really, really well. But it lacks the proper emotions. And you don't have the emotions because you don't have the experience. I can appreciate her as an African-American young woman, okay? That's intellectual. That's having read a lot of books. That's being in the classroom, okay? Having a lot of different kind of students. But I lack the experience. And that's the most important and most valuable thing. Because when you have the experience, now it refines the way you think. But just thinking about something is not enough. If you want your kids to really appreciate, they gotta go through the experience. And the best teacher for that is a guy named Gurdjieff. He was hands-on. There are mixed reviews about him. But anyways, yeah. I don't know if any of you in this class, like, just look, your essays are crummy. Every single person in this room. They're no good. Now, you're going to look at that as a criticism and it's harsh and it's negative and you hate me for it. Fine. Just wait until you yourself become an instructor. Or just wait until you try to convey a certain position you have. Let's just say you're mad at your boyfriend or companion, and you try to knock some sense into that thick skull of this person. And then you look at him or her and say, tell me what I said. And they say everything in all the wrong ways. And then you get upset. I spent all of my energy thinking about this stuff, then putting all of my energy into expressing this stuff in a way that someone like you, a dimwit can understand. You can't even do that. Now imagine me in the classroom for about 5 weeks, 3 hours a night, or 3 days a week, okay? The least that someone can do is write a relatively decent essay that has some depth to it. But all you get is bullet points. Now, the only way students can understand is when they want to express something that they really are passionate about. And they have to sit back and wait for the response. And most often it's going to be really, really awful. This is reincarnation. In other words, all of us in this class have no choice but to experience what we give out. You write a bad essay, well, your companion is going to say a bullet point to you, and you're going to say, what exactly did he say? And that's how it is. Yeah.
I have 2 questions left, but seem to one quicker. But I often find myself thinking about how certain friends I made and lost throughout, especially like my early to mid-teenage years, we would be really good for each other if we met now, but we wouldn't be the same people if we hadn't met then. And I wonder, what is your thought on like that sort of item?
Unfortunately, I'm no longer at that age where I miss anyone. Maybe when I was 19 or 20, I'm sure I had similar feelings to those of yours. But now, I have a friend who called me a few times, and we used to play music together for over 25 years. I haven't even replied to him. Just don't care. Yeah, so good luck. Anyone else? Yes. We're going to spend some time tonight talking about and finishing up Confucianism. It's a really, really, really good tradition, much better than Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity or the Epic of Gilgamesh, because it's so grounded. The only thing that really matters in Confucianism is family. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else matters. Your father is like a god. Your mom is like a goddess. If you reflect on the Epic of Gilgamesh, you realize that you're talking about a very unhappy man. He can't be happy with women, he can't be happy with children, he can't be happy with his parents, he can't be happy with all the money and the power that he has. He's just a very unhappy man. And the only way he can find happiness is by going to the gods, going on a spiritual quest, figuring out who he is, what he is. Looking for this wise man named Uttanapishtim. If you were to talk about Hinduism and their version of happiness, pleasures of the body suck, pleasures of money and power suck, pleasure of having a family that's also incomplete. The only pleasure worth having is pleasure of the soul, that's Atman. And the only way you can find an Atman is by finding a teacher. Not your father, not your mother, not your siblings, not your friends, not your grandparents, a teacher. Buddhism. Impermanence. Dissatisfaction. Find the Buddha seed within. Confucianism, the story is very, very different. You can actually be happy. So imagine for a moment that today we were going to focus 2 hours of our conversation about the relationship between husbands and wives, parents and their children. And let's say accidentally I happen to do a beautiful job expressing these ideas that come from Chinese philosophy. Now you sit in the corner, let's just say, and you begin to kind of mull over everything that we've talked about. It makes sense to you. I mean, when you are born, you're not going to say Yahweh or Jesus Christ. You have no idea what a sin is. You cry and your mother runs to you. It's like someone praying and God answering their prayers. That's what children experience. And you go out as a kid and your neighbor's kids, they have bicycles, they're riding, they're laughing, and you just cry and you say, I want a bike. You wake up in the morning, there's your father with a brand new bike. And then he puts you on the bicycle, holds the seat, and runs behind you, and all of a sudden, your prayers are answered. You had envy. Envy because you saw your neighbors having a bicycle. You didn't. You prayed for it, and here it is. Now, as you sit back and you listen to all of this, you say, man, never knew my mom, never knew my dad. And let's say you introspect or self-reflect a little bit and you realize, I'm also like 48 years old. Forgive me, not like that. Or 60, going back to school again. And you begin to realize the importance of having a family and the tragedy of not having a family. And up to this point, your life has been relatively okay. You've managed well. You have your own house, you have your own companion, you have like 5 dogs and 3 parakeets. Things are good, but now when you think back, you are able to kind of connect the dots together, and you say, man, if my parents had stayed together, if my parents this, if my parents that, I would have probably still been in touch with my brother and my sister, and we would live close by. And now you begin to reflect. And you say, if I didn't know, that's one of the problems with all these, thinkers, whether it's Malcolm X or Cornel West or Mahatma Gandhi or Jesus Christ, they make us think. The problem with life is life puts you on autopilot and you just move. Reflection puts the brake on and says, no, you can't just move. Think before you stop walking. And then the moment you begin to reflect, you also begin to evaluate and find the value in the things that you're doing or the things you want to do. Having children is not an act of reflection. It's intuitive and instinctual. It's only when you have the child, when you realize the difficulties, the burdens of raising children, especially nowadays, now that pain makes you reflect. Now you say, well, I would want a second one, but I don't think I want to. Maybe I should just raise one healthy child as opposed to 2 unhealthy ones. So the other thing about reflection is you take something it's like food. You take it, you put it inside your head, i.e. your mouth. And then you can't reflect if you don't have teeth. You need to have a good digestive system, because if you don't, you're going to have diarrhea, you're going to throw up, nothing is going to be processed well, you're going to get sick. Thinking is very much the same way. People write in their journals. Now, the problem with journaling, for me, I think, and it's a relatively new thing, is that you have a closet, it's cluttered, you can't find anything because over the years you've accumulated so much junk, and now you say, I want to clean it. Now you live in a studio. Your closet has million items in it. You take everything out. You put it out, but there is nowhere to walk now. You have to go through all of the items one by one, and it's too much. And you don't have enough time. One lifetime is not going to be enough. Okay? Journaling is, you have all these feelings and you have all these thoughts. You write them down, but there is no teeth to process them. So what happens is you get sad, you get depressed, you get lonely. And then you have thoughts of maybe ending your life completely. And it has a very alienating, isolating quality to it. You know, if on the other hand, you're able to kind of look at all the stuff that you're bringing out as you're writing and then process them in a relatively healthy way, you know, then it's a good way to reflect, because you're not just taking stuff in and then regurgitating them without really understanding, like when you write them back on a piece of paper or something. Okay. So reflection is you internalize something, you feel it, you think about it, you process it, and hopefully you'll walk away understanding. Thinking has to do with life. You know, you have to write essays. Think well. You're not going to reflect on the ideas you talk about in this class. It would paralyze you. You will lose, you know, your ability to write and submit your essay because you don't know anything about anything. Thinking, on the other hand, is I need a grade. This class is going to end in 2 weeks. I need to submit all the missed work. It's about politics of life. A reflection is about you caring for your own self. It's a very different story. Does that... Maybe not. Anyone else? Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah. Kyla. Yes.
The concept of stoicism a little bit.
Stoicism. So to talk about Stoicism, I'm going to borrow, not from the Stoics or the Greeks or the Romans. I'm going to borrow from some of my Muslim friends of this particular branch of Sufism we call Malamati or Malamat. But before talking about Malamatis, let me tell you a story that I have borrowed from Jean-Paul Sartre in his play Nausea or No Exit. I won't tell the entire story in the way I usually do because it'll take 3 hours. So I'll give you the idiot's version. It's not about you. It's just, you know, those cliff notes. It's called, what is it called? Idiots? It's an idiot's version? Anyways.
Like books for dummies?
Yeah, books for dummies. Yeah. So there is this first character whose name is Garsan. Now, in his head, he has all these ideas about himself, that he's a political activist, he's a social activist about justice and fairness and equality, diversity, inclusion, and all that. And he lives underground because he's a wanted man by FBI, CIA, you know. One day he comes out because he wants to go to Safeway and grab some Haagen-Dazs ice cream, you know, those mini that are 6 in a box. Caramel, coffee. They're so great. I can only talk about them these days. So, as he's coming out of Safeway with a huge bucket of ice cream, the cops recognize him. They sit him down, ask him lots of questions, and they cuff him. And all of a sudden he begins to cry. I'm not Garsan. I'm not the political activist that you think I am. I may look like him, but I'm not really him. And he is so convincing that he is uncuffed and he goes home. But now he has a problem. His problem is, am I a hero or am I a coward? I've been a political activist in my head, but now I got my hands dirty and I wept like a child. Maybe I'm not a hero. Maybe I don't have very much courage. Maybe I'm not really brave. All of us are patient when life is going really, really well. But the moment life goes bad, we throw a temper tantrum. So Garsan has now this issue. Am I a hero or am I a coward? And that's the thing. Once this window opens and you begin to have certain honest glimpses of yourself, it's very, very difficult to go back to being blind. Someone has revealed to you who you really are. And you got to figure this out. You have another person in this play. Her name is Stell. I think it's Stell. I may get the names mixed up, but Stell is very, very attractive. But she doesn't have very much confidence by herself. And what she does is she uses her body to bed men and then have men tell her how beautiful she is. Okay. And then you have Inez, who's a lesbian. And they're talking about the 1960s, even though it's, written by a Frenchman, and things are a bit more relaxed in France than it is America. Nevertheless, it was still an unwanted thing. So she has to figure out what she wants to do with her lesbianism, if it's a word. So they're all stuck in one room. And no one can get out. And they each have a problem. Garsan needs to know if he's a hero or a coward. Stell needs to know if she's attractive. And Inez needs to know that just because she's a lesbian, that she has value as a human being. What the story is about is all these three people need each other to get to know who and what they are. But they only want to hear what they themselves want to hear. So Garsan, not knowing how to figure this dilemma for himself, he goes to Stell. Says, Estelle, am I a hero or am I a coward? And Stell says, well, now remember, Stell has her own issues. Says, you tell me I'm beautiful, sleep with me, have sex with me, and I'll tell you, you're a hero. Great. So now remember, you can only deceive yourself to so far. After a while, you can no longer. And so they're both naked, they're about to do it, and all of a sudden Garsan says, I know exactly how this is going to unfold. I don't really like Stell. I don't find her very attractive, but I have to because I need something. And so all these three people have to use each other to get what they want. Stoicism is about independence, is about making sure that other people are not creating emotions for you. And even if they are creating emotions for you, you need to understand emotions come and emotions go. They have no permanence unless you desire to make them permanent. Look, whatever your father did, that was 10 years ago. Why do you keep it in a frozen sea of ice? Let the ice thaw. And when it becomes water, it will take the narrative with it. You don't need to be 16 all the way to your 90s. So what Stoicism really is all about is the world. Look how it turns. And whichever way it goes, it's going to carry you with it. It's going to create thoughts for you. It's going to create fantasies for you, desires for you, passions for you, emotions for you. And the very same way that the world creates emotions, in the same way it'll destroy them. So why would you want to give your life to such an uncaring world? It's part of the existentialist movement around the 19th century, which is that the world is absurd, it's ridiculous, it cares for none of us in this classroom, not a single one of us. Why do you give it so much value? And I suppose if I was to give you Stoicism in a different way, I would do the following. Go home tonight. Find a moment of inspiration. Sit and write your final essay. Be creative. Be in the zone. Be in the moment. And then submit that essay. Let me give you an F, because it's not going to be very good, in my eyes. And allow yourself to be okay with having received an F. Why? You were consumed by a moment of inspiration. You allowed it to flow through. You were a good Taoist. Okay? Once the inspiration went away, you said, okay, it wasn't my writing. I'm going to let it go. Now comes the other part, which is a Kaila who is political, who wants a grade, who fears not passing the class. Remember, all these passions and fears are created by the social and political world. And the Stoics say, no, be independent, be autonomous. Don't let Amir Sabzavari create an unpleasant emotion for you. Don't let the world give you a narrative that you are successful only if you have a diploma. Don't be like that. Be a woman, strong and powerful, with or without a degree, with or without a man. Reflect well. Be objective. Be less entangled in emotions and more attached to objective reflection. Always go back to James Baldwin. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that he says. If I was to call him, and I would never, but this is a hypothetical, if I was to call him the N-word, it'd probably take me to Zachary's Pizza. You know, it'd probably get us like a large deep dish, spinach, mushroom, pesto, you know, Caesar salad, family size. And then for the next 2 hours, he would want to kind of figure out what my sickness is. He's not going to allow me to create inside him anger and fear. He's not going to judge. Because the moment he does that, in a very subtle way, he's going to say, I am going to give Amir Sabzavari all of my power. Stoicism is about that. Keep your power to yourself. Don't let anyone or anything take it away. You are a young woman. You have a brain, you can write, you can think. You need a man, but should you not have a man, you'll be fine. Anyone else?
Southern American and Middle Eastern cultures.
Okay, good. But let's talk about Confucianism then. Good job. Thank you. It's such a boring tradition there. Okay. There are two very powerful forces in the universe, the yin and the yang, the feminine, the masculine, the dark, the light, the active and the passive. Now, symbolically, of course, these two forces can be on the outside, they can exist in the physical world, they can also exist in oneself. Okay. Now, let me tell you a story. About what it means to first be independent and then not be independent and belong to a community or a family. Some years ago, we were invited to a wedding. And so me and my kids went there. This is about maybe 25 years ago. And when we came back to Sacramento, where I lived, or Roseville, there was a message on the answering machine. And I know many of you are young enough, but there were these clunky, huge machines that would sit on the counter in the kitchen, and you had to press all these buttons, and there was a tape, actual tape. You know. And so the message was, if this is Mr. Sabzavari, can you call us back? So I called, and this woman picked up the phone, says, this is Amir Sabzavari, I'm returning your call. Says, yes, thank you for returning my call. Was that your son dancing in, the wedding ceremony? I said, yeah, it was my son. So how old is he, if I may ask? Well, it's about 25. Why? Well, I have a daughter. She's 19. We're Iranians or Persians, somewhat traditional. I don't want my daughter to be contaminated by the American culture. If you think your son is ready for marriage, maybe we can set something up. I said, okay. I hung up the phone, and I called my wife. Say, come, sit, make some Americano. Let's sit and have a conversation. My wife and I, of course, never talk. But on this occasion, so she comes to the study, we're sitting, and I say to her, do you think he's ready? He's a kid, she says. They gotta force him to mature, Yeah, he's not ready. So no, he's ready. He's not ready, she says to me. He's ready. And so her and I go to Los Angeles. We don't tell my son any of the stuff. We go to Los Angeles, we check out the family. Not the daughter, we just check out the parents. Because ultimately, we turn out to be like your parents. So we stay there for about 2 days, see if they drink, if they smoke, if they watch any naughty shows, how they talk to each other, what he does, what she does, how they interact, what they talk about. We like what we saw and smelled. The wife was a good cook, which means the daughter hopefully is a good cook. She was pleasant, hopefully she'll be pleasant. So we come to Roseville. My son is, I don't know what he was doing. I call him to the study. Yo, need to have a chat. So what do you think about marriage? Marriage? Yeah, I'll get married when I'm like 35, 40. 35, 40, are you crazy? You'll be like in a wheelchair. So long story short, he tells me that he can't get married because he has a girlfriend. You can't have a girlfriend if you live in my house. So I ask him, I'm hoping that it's like Persian. She says, no. Her name is like Stephanie. Who's Stephanie? And I tell my wife, can you bring that Persian name book? Let me see if Stephanie is a Persian name. Lo and behold, it's not. Say, okay, well, why don't you invite Stephanie in? Let's take a look at her. I'm a nice guy. I'll accept anyone, really, as long as I prove them. So Stephanie comes in. She's wearing a mini skirt. This is, I remember, first time meeting us. Mini skirt. Some minis are here and some minis are here. Okay? So her mini was here. Okay? Now, she's wearing this really, really thin, tan blouse with nothing underneath. Maybe she mistook it for a brothel, I'm not sure. But nevertheless, she comes in and I can't even look at her because she's not dressed appropriately. My wife is crying in the kitchen. My son is extremely happy. So I look at stuff and I say, so where are your parents? Well, my dad is in Texas and my mom is in Louisiana. Why? Well, you know, I wasn't planned. When I opened my eyes the moment I was born, I only saw the strange person. I don't know where my dad is, and I don't talk to my mom very often, maybe once every 5 years. So, oh, well, this is beautiful. My son has found, you know, a nugget. So I try to be understanding and forgiving, you know, like Jesus Christ. Except he didn't have a kid, so he wouldn't know. So I say, okay, maybe she just made a mistake in her outfit and she doesn't know when to keep her mouth shut. She's just young and lacks experience. So we begin to have food, and food is all over her face. When the food is done, she doesn't help my wife, you know, take the stuff to the kitchen. She just sits there. And so I call my son to we all go sit and have some tea, and I say, so, do you know much about the Persian culture? Because where's Persia, she asks. What state is Persia? I say, okay, that's great. Well, do you know that my son speaks the Persian language? Do you know much about poetry and religion that exists in Iran? Oh, I love everybody, she says. So, oh my gosh, she's so stupid. So I call my son to the kitchen and says, get rid of her, ASAP, you know, like the plague. She says, and he says, but Dad, I love her. You know, all of us in this class, we've been young and stupid. So he takes her home, he comes back. I put him on house arrest for the next 2-3 months. I know how love works. You climb out the window, you write notes, you receive texts, emails, all that stuff, right? And then when he is relatively recovered, we get him married. He says, but Dad, I don't even know who she is. Well, you're never going to know who anybody is. So just get married. But should I not date her for 5 or 6 months? No. You can date her when you're married. But I don't have a job, no money. Well, don't worry, we'll provide. But where am I going to live? You're going to live with us. You want me and my wife to come and live with you guys in your house? Yeah. Eventually he gets married. And they lived with us for about 2.5, 3 years. After about 7 or 8 months, I asked my son, so are you guys planning to have children? Yeah, when I finish school, I said, no, it's not going to work that way. So I call his wife, and I hold his hand, and I take them both to the back room. So you guys stay here, light some candles, some soft piano in the background. I'm going to lock the door, and I want to hear some sounds. You know, I want to hear that you guys are having fun. And so they come out after 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. And she says, I'm pregnant. For those of you who may not know, in the Middle East, things happen very, very fast. Okay? And so, and once they have a child, they have their own place, 2 doors from us. گلی که خم بدادم پیچ و تابش ز آب دیدگونم دادم آبش به درگاه الهی کی روابی گل از ما دیگری گیره گلابش. For those of us in this class who have children, you know how it is. You give your life for your kids. By that I mean you give your youth, your time, your energy, your money. Okay? And so I'm not just going to allow anyone to walk into my life and snatch my investments. and then bankrupted. I know what I have raised, I know who I am, I know the dark and the light forces inside me, and I know which force has occupied my life, my wife's life, and my family's life. I'm not going to allow anyone who's just dark, and sometimes too dark, to come in and destroy that which is light. Love that ultimately yields a broken heart is not worth it. So, how do people meet and how do they marry? It's not their choice. You make the wrong choice. Remember, for Confucianism, you don't need to seek a spiritual quest. You don't need to look for a god. You don't need to go on this quest like Gilgamesh or the Buddha. There is no Atman to be found. No one's going to care for you, not even God, the way your mother does, the way your father does. No one's going to sacrifice their entire life the way your parents do. We don't need a deity that's out there. They're right there in front of you. Your parents are your deities. Now, what makes parents these tiny little gods is the following. Remember what we talked about on Wednesday, or maybe it was Tuesday. There are 4 components that all of us in this class have on the inside. We are made of earth. We are made of fire, i.e. passion. We are made of water, the vehicle that carries the passion here and there. And we are made of air or spirit. Okay? Whatever fire or passion that lives inside you is family-oriented, has come from a secure and safe ground. They're cultural. You're not going to be fed false advertisements about anything. So your main sources of advertisement are your mom and your father and the culture in which you live. And because they are very protective of their community, of their villages, of this community people, they make sure that no poisonous advertisement ever infects the psyche of people. Okay? Now, men are always going to be the light, the active component. Women are always going to be the dark and the passive component. Now, some of you feminists in this class may say, well, why does the woman have to be passive and dark and evil, and men have to be like light, active, and profound? Well, think of it this way. Why do we have light in this room? Because you have positive and negative. If any of you in this class have ever looked at electric wires, you have a dark and you have a white. Okay? Look. Now, in Chinese culture, the light, the masculine, must always dominate the feminine. Look, you're talking about 3,000 years ago. Okay, don't go nuts. Okay? Men have the majority of power. Whatever they say goes. And I'm thinking that it's based on this particular philosophy. And I may be wrong. You ever wonder why we don't really have too many women leaving their husbands and wives and children, and parents, to go off to the desert and figure out who and what they are. Women are very grounded. Women know almost everything that there needs to be known. They may not know it intellectually, they live it, they embody it. Men, on the other hand, they're going to go on this quest. They're going to lose everything. They're going to fast. They're going to abstain and refrain from living life. They're going to go out there, figure things out, and come back. So what you have is a woman who knows without knowing. And then you have a man who didn't know, but now knows. What you have are two forces that complement, complete, and perfect one another. Okay? But because the man loses, goes to the forest, figures things out, comes back, he comes with a good amount of understanding what wisdom is and how it can be applied to life. Remember, women can simply have children and love their kid for the rest of their life. A man has to look for decades sometime to figure out what their passion really is. That's their kid. And most men will never find a child. Okay? So women are the Gaia and men are Uranus, sky and the earth. And when the two of them meet, what they create is chaos. And chaos has two children, one dark, one confusion. And when the dark and the confused get together, these are siblings. When the brother and the sister sleep together, they have a child. And his name is light. Okay? Now, what does it mean to be parent? We make a lot of mistakes. And we try to reason with our children. I am the embodiment of mistakes. Look at me. Don't repeat what I have done. It is our mistakes as parents that make us wise and insightful and protective of our children. And for that reason, the kids must always obey the parents. Always. Not because the parents are wise, but because the parents have made mistakes. And because the parents have learned from those mistakes the hard way. Anyone in this class is over the age of 25. If I was 18, and if I was to go to any of the 25-year-olds in this classroom and ask or tell them, I'm going to drop out of school and go somewhere and have fun, you will probably reprimand me. Approach me and say, are you crazy? I used to be 18. I did exactly what you want to do. And it's a complete waste. Kids can never say no to their parents because they don't have the experience. They don't have the mistakes. They don't have the wisdom. Kids are not adults at the age of 18. In fact, at the age of 18, it's the dumbest age you could ever be. It's an age of waste from 18 all the way to 60. For those of you who may fancy the Chinese philosophy of life, remember, every culture has its own philosophy of life. Don't go home and look at your companion who happens to be the opposite sex and say, honey, you're the light, guide me. Okay? When in Rome, do as Romans do. In America, do as Americans do. You know? Do you have any questions or comments before we... Kendra? It could be related, unrelated, it's okay. I'm sorry? Renunciation? You know, it's a funny thing. There are many parts of the world, not Western, where a beautiful woman is a woman who is meaty. You know, who has some meat on her, fat on her. That she weighs like about 200 pounds. If you were to bring one of those women, say from Turkey or from Kenya to America, let's just say California, little by little, the culture of California will tell her, oh, you're a little obese. Oh, you're a little fat. You need to lose weight. Because in California or American culture, the thinner you are, the more attractive you are. Now, she didn't know this particular philosophy when she lived in her country. So there was no need for her to imagine that being big or being fat is unattractive. In fact, it's a valued thing in her country. Here, she is sold a certain set of advertisements. And then it's imposed on her, blitz, like football, you know. Every single day they keep telling her, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat. And all of a sudden, it dawns on her perhaps that, well, maybe I'm a little weighty. Maybe I should lose some weight. And now in the morning, her husband, like before, serves her breakfast. 5 cups of orange juice, 20 buckets of Haagen-Dazs. And then she says, no. Her great renunciation begins. That the culture has sold her a concept of beauty and happiness and attractiveness that's to some extent foreign to her, but she lives here now. So she begins to eat less, and every 10 minutes she weighs herself. That's one kind of renunciation. And if you think about human beings as tabula rasa, blank slates, that we come out to some extent being this blank white sheet of paper, parents, culture, media, friends, relatives, neighborhoods begin to write stuff on this piece of paper, i.e. the consciousness of a tiny kid. Happiness is being written, justice is being written, racism is being written, and then you grow up with this stuff, and they become part of who and what you are. At a certain point in your life, depending on who you meet, okay, if you happen to be like Pinocchio running into some dicey friends, you renounce school. Because in school there is discipline. In school you sit for 2 hours and you get bored and you have to pretend as if it's fun. There is frustration, there is anger, there is boredom. If on the other hand, you hang out with your friends, we go to the movies, we do this and we do that and it's fun and it's pleasurable. So you renounce school and you gravitate towards something else. There are other kinds of renunciations that do not happen because of advertisements. And it's what we call midlife crisis, or what women go through when they come to realize that they want to have a family, i.e. children or a child, that despite having a relatively healthy human being in their life, they look at the man and they say, will you marry me? And the man says, I don't think so. And though you have lived with this man for 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 years, you realize that your goals are not going to be met. And this particular piece of advertisement doesn't come from out there, it comes from in here. And you're willing to renounce, give up. That's what it means. You sacrifice what has been meaningful to you, what has been a habit to you, an addiction to you, to get yourself to a place that is, at this stage in your life, more beautiful, more idealistic, that will allow you to get a glimpse of perfection, if you will. In many ways, really, it depends who is selling you the concept, whatever the concept may be. You know, renunciation first takes place because you love someone, you respect them, and you fear them, and you don't want to disappoint them. That particular act of renunciation has to do with your entanglement with someone on the outside. There is another act of giving up or renunciation, which is you yourself have come to understand certain things about your own life. Some of the things that have kept you from evolving, maturing, getting to a certain place that will bring comfort and meaning to your life. And with a good amount of pain and reflection, you say, well, these that were once the bringer of pleasure have been now the cause of suffocation or disappointment. I want to walk away from them. But you can't walk away because you're habituated in them, you're addicted to them. It takes a good amount of sacrifice. Renunciation means giving up. And in giving up, you always have to make effort, always. So it's always going to be difficult. You give up for 2 days, you go back to it. Then you give up for 5 days and you go back and simmer in it for another 2 months. That's how it works. But again, it has to do with the fact that you don't see yourself at a place that brings you comfort, solace, happiness, joy. And you assume that if you were to get rid of it, you know, it's like you walk into your house and it's cluttered. Lots of tables and chairs and sofas. And you want to give them up because you want to walk around freely. But you've had a 20-year history with the sofa or the chair. Your dad used to sit there. Your mom used to sit there. You had breakfast on that table. When you give up, you know, first you fantasize about it, and after a while you summon up the courage and you just put it outside, and then it's gone. There are always going to be stages to things, always. Remember, to make any idea practical, it's like cooking the food. It's like making rice. If you've been to my house, and so you know what Persian rice is all about. So what happens? So you boil water, that's step number 1. You put the rice in there, step number 2. And then you strain the rice. And then you put the rice back in the pot with some butter, with some water. You let it kind of cook for the next half hour. And then at the bottom, you have what we call tadik. Everything has to do with steps, everything. You can't get to any destination with blink of an eye. There are steps that you need to take. Renunciation is very much the same way. You're walking on this path, it's a beautiful path. At a certain point, you say, oh, it's not working out for me. And you can't just walk away from it because, you know, it has made you who you are. You have a history with it. And cutting the history is going to be tough. If you have ever been in love and you have ever been broken by love and you had not the power but the other person had, you realize that there are moments where you are turning and tossing in bed and you want to go to sleep because you're so exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally, but the images won't leave you alone. And you try your best to renounce the images. Say, no, go away. I want to just 10 minutes of rest. And that's what renunciation is. You want to give up something because it's beginning to bother you. Pain, sacrifice, time. Anyone else? Okay.
7:37.
You're joking. This feels like 10. Okay. Kendra? Yeah? Okay. You sure? Go ahead. Okay. Now, English, of course, is not the best of languages when it comes to etiquette. In Persian, when I talk to my father, I can either say to, which is very informal, or I can say shoma, which is very formal. It has reverence, it has respect. We are not allowed to refer to our fathers, our parents, informally. We can't say to. And we can definitely not call them by their first name. Last name, maybe. Now, this is a man I've been around for about 60, almost 61 years. You can't refer to your parents as to. It's disrespectful. First, my father is 30 years older than I am. And every year that's added to your life, not only does it add regret, it also adds learning from those regrets and wisdom from those regrets that you can pass it on. And you respect your parents, not because they're your parents, but because in them lives a good amount of wisdom. Last name. My last name is Sabzavari. My first name is Amir. Amir has only lived about 60 years. It doesn't deserve respect. 60 years is nothing. Sabzavari, on the other hand, it's named after a city in Iran, Sabzavar. That city is named after a man, Haj Mullah Hadi Sabzavari, who was a Sufi mystic around the 9th century. So when you call me by my last name, if I have any awareness about me, my last name will take me all the way back to the 9th century, to this city. And then I remember and realize that I have a responsibility to my last name. I have to live that responsibility. Now, it doesn't mean that when you email me, if you ever email me, you say, hey, Mr. Sabzavari, that's not your culture, that's not my culture, at least here, so just call me Amir. Okay? Now remember, the reason why you do this is because your parents are gods. We don't need to go anywhere seeking happiness. It's found at home. Now, should the husband and wife ever have a disagreement of sorts, you will never express that disagreement in front of children. Never. Now, remember, this is just philosophy of Confucianism. It doesn't mean that whenever you go to like the Chinatown in Oakland, you're going to have this fantasy in your head that yes, all these people have disagreements, but they do it in hiding. They're all functional and they're all healthy. That's not what we're talking about. Okay? Just because I'm Persian, I'm not Gul Sorkhi. Just because you're black, it doesn't make you Angela Davis. Okay? Just because you're Chinese, it doesn't make you Bruce Lee. I'm just saying that just because there's a hero, it doesn't mean that everyone becomes a hero like that. Okay? Now, Once you come to realize that age is just not numbers, but lived life, making mistakes, having regrets and remorse, emotional chaos, depression, loneliness. You sit somewhere, you learn from them, and now you have insights and wisdom. If your brother or sister is only a year or two older than you are, the way you treated your parents with such dignity and respect, your older siblings also deserve the same respect. Why? You're 16, she's like 30, right? How old are you? Well, same difference. She's lived 2 years more than you. Forgive me. So the point is that you approach old age with a good amount of respect and reverence. Again, don't be an American. Don't just say age is just a number. It is not. Okay? It's filled with lived experiences and ultimately wisdom. Now, these are the 3 commandments, the first 3 commandments in Confucianism. Parents, siblings towards one another, and of course kids towards their parents. Now that you have learned what it means to respect people who are older than you are, you walk in society. In society, what do you see? Young people. What do you want from young people? The recognition that we are not equals. I'm not your equal. You're 20. I'm 60. Don't call me Amir. Don't raise your hand and ask stupid questions. I'm not talking about. Now remember, if you don't learn this stuff at home, you can't act it in society. Everything begins at home. This is a 3-hour class. You can't just stand up and walk out and come back an hour later. It doesn't work that way. This is China. Since you're talking about Confucianism. You're 20, I'm 60. I'm the instructor of this class. Have some goddamn respect for me. You don't need to like me. But what you should know is that because I'm 40 years older than you are, I've been through things. I've seen things. Not that you haven't, but I've had time to process them. If you want to know the definition of justice in Chinese philosophy, it's that we are not equal. Everybody has their own space and place and stage. And you've got to be aware of it and respect it. Remember, the ideas you're talking about is not for us, which is Chinese philosophy. But it'd be good if we can all practice these ideas. Then there is the 5th element which happens to be relatively important. the presence of the emperor or the governor or the ruler or the king or the president. In a couple of months, all of us in this class, well, some of us in this class will go vote either for this evil or the other evil. Regardless, these kings that you and I have are chosen by the people, and there is nothing sacred about this particular voting. There is nothing sacred or mature about the people who vote for these people. And there's certainly nothing mature about the candidates either. Emperors have a very unique place in Chinese philosophy and Chinese history. They're called sons of heaven. For some strange reason, they believe that the king or the president or the ruler has his power given to him by the gods themselves. He is just not an ordinary man. And because that power has been given to him by the gods, and he's not ordinary but extraordinary, he happens to be the shepherd of his people. So every morning the emperor wakes up, looks directly into the sun, feeds from the sun, because the sun symbolizes truth, honesty, integrity, decency. Once this emperor has been nourished by the sun, turns his back to the sun, now faces his people. And the only thing that concerns the emperor is the good and the well-being of his people or community. If this is a little difficult to grasp, let me give it to you this way. I am sure some of you in this class have seen the movie Moana, Brad Pitt. Good, you've seen it then. Yes, there is no Brad Pitt in the movie. So, what makes Moana unique? I don't really know. All I know is that when she's a very, very tiny little kid, the water just loves her. Doesn't love all the other kids, but loves her. Moana also has a grandmother who happens to be a magician. She's clairvoyant. She knows things. She's like a priestess of sorts. She knows that Moana has a certain destiny, that she is there for her people. And she always encourages her to be a bit more curious, a bit more courageous, a bit more brave, to go where her parents tell her not to go, which is the water. The father tries to protect Moana from being curious. Why? Because the father is haunted by his own past. He journeyed into the water, one of his friends got killed. So from that point on, kind of like having a trauma on the inside, he just doesn't like the water anymore, despite the fact that these are people who are voyagers, who live on water, eat water, drink water, breathe water. Okay? Moana goes on this quest eventually, coming to realize that the earth really is not her land. It's the water that she needs to go to. And there's a good amount of conflict. You know, she has to disobey her parents. She has to follow the wisdom of her grandmother, who's a little nuts, but nevertheless. And even though when she's dying, the grandmother is, she doesn't say, "Weep for me, wait till I'm dead." While she has some breath inside her lungs, she looks at this young kid and says, "Go. Your father is distracted because I'm going to die. His wife is distracted because I'm going to die. The entire community is distracted because I'm going to die. Now that no one is looking at you and looking for you, go. It's the best time." And she goes. And on this quest, she's all alone. And on this quest, because she's alone and she is earnest, and because it is her fate, the god Maui comes down to her. And very much like what Joseph Campbell argued, she has to deal with the monster. She becomes very intimate with him. And she comes back to rescue her people. I've been told that Moana 2 is coming out. I'm not sure what the movie's about, but nevertheless, Moana 1 was fantastic. It's about what all of us in this class have to go through if you ever come to realize that you have a destiny, that life has made you for a particular purpose. You will go through the same journey that Moana did in the movie. Right? That's the emperor. You come back not for yourself, but you come back for your people. And so unlike us, you don't make fun of George Bush, or you don't make fun of Biden, or you don't make fun of Trump. Okay? We only make fun of them because we see them as human. And human beings are flawed. Not the emperor. The emperor has no flaw. Now remember, you have to die to see Jesus Christ. You have to wait to die to see Jesus Christ. Not for the Chinese. Once you are in the presence of the emperor, you are in the presence of God. Even if the emperor is not present, he's made a city for you. That city protects you and nourishes you. Hi. So, do you have any questions? No one?
There's something wrong with that. How does that affect me trying to?
Can you say your question again?
There's something that I know I'm aware that I'm not good at it. And I want to pursue it.
There was a movie that was based on a true story. I think it took place in France some years ago. It's black and white. I like the movie. Many of you may not. It's called The Song of Bernadette. Later on, she became a saint. The Pope argued that because of some of the miracles that she did. But all that aside, what's interesting about the movie is that here's a young woman. She's sick. She can't really run. She can't do much of anything because of her health. One day she goes out, she's sitting somewhere, and the mother of Jesus, Mary, comes and visits her, and they have a chat. And she doesn't know who to tell the story to. She tells it to her sisters, the sister tells it to the parents, and the word gets out. The funny thing is, there is no envy amongst people that I want to be like Bernadette. See, you and I live in an era where we all want to be a Steve Jobs, we all want to be a Tiger Woods, we all want to be a Mike Tyson, we all want to be a Kim Kardashian. One of the tragedies of history, especially the moment you're able to read, you become acquainted with people like Malcolm X. You become acquainted with people like Mahatma Gandhi and Jesus Christ and Muhammad and the Buddha. And what you do is you begin to compare your life to theirs. I mean, I like to think myself as a mini philosopher. There was a time I wanted to be like Socrates. I remember when Hussein had given me the Dialogues of Plato in Persian, 5 volumes. It was my first time having ever heard the name Socrates, and then sit and read how Socrates engages his audience. And I tried to mimic that for a couple of years, and it worked out really, really well. Because what reading did for me, it made my life feel small. And I wanted to become like Socrates, big. I wanted to checkmate people with conversation. I just didn't want to have a conversation. I wanted to win. I wanted to prove myself that I am better than them. I have a certain intellectual prowess that commands envy, you know. And so right now, all of us live in an environment where our life is made small, irrelevant, meaningless. You know, whether it's Kim Kardashian, who makes you feel unattractive and ugly, or Malcolm X, who makes your life cheap. This is where we are right now. You know, the more you get exposed to people like Malcolm, like Kim, the less you feel as if your life means anything. That wasn't the case for many of us for thousands of years. I mean, first you had very controlled set of advertisements. You know, second, people actually believe that envy is a sin. You shouldn't be envious. You should just accept your life for the way it is. You know, my grandmother and just had kids, 5 kids. She didn't want to be a doctor. Only when time passed, Iran became a bit more evolved, industrialized. Then she came here and she saw that women can actually go to school, women can actually read, women can actually become doctors. Then she said, I wasted my life. I should have been a doctor. I'm nobody to give advice to anybody. But if I was somebody and if I was to give advice, it would be the following. Living a very normal life these days, it is immensely difficult. Live a normal life. Once you have accomplished the normalcy of life in a relatively healthy way, and if you still realize that you are made for more, then pursue it. The other thing is, if your question has to do with teaching, like being in the classroom, it really is a shot in the dark. No one knows how they're going to be. The moment you walk in the classroom, the moment you open your mouth, the moment the interaction with you and the students come about, you know, you will know the first minute if there is any salt to you. Now, there is nothing wrong with being ordinary. What you can do, just in case you realize that you're not in the classroom and you're not like a Socrates or a Cornel West, you don't inspire like that, your audience. What happens through time, if you care for ideas and you care for the way you present ideas, over time, your expression of the ideas will become better and better and better and better. And as you get better, what will happen is you will have, let's say you're teaching this class, you will have 10 minutes of intensity, like wildfire, that will captivate your audience. And then it's like freeze descending. Then you'll go back to boring everybody. So again, if your question has to do with teaching, nobody knows. If your question has to do with becoming more than you are, I would say take care of your body, find a companion, get a job, work through the friction with your companion, whatever compromise you need to make, however you need to work it out. If you still hunger for something more, then you can leap for those things. You know, these ideas for the ideas that we've talked about in this class the past few weeks, they're not for us, and they will never be for us. America is far too broken for these ideas to actually become applicable. We are emotional junkies. That's what this culture creates. The idea of detaching or being a stoic, it's impossible. And it'd be great if you can go through rehab by observing the ideas of the Buddha. But that, you know, takes a lot of reflection, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and nobody can do that. Not in this culture. And also there is a good amount of humility in knowing that you're not good at something. And if you know that, then you're okay with the mistakes. I've been doing some masonry work for the past maybe 2-3 days. It's my first time. When you look at it, everything is crooked. I'm okay with it. I'm not a professional. It's okay. Anyone else? Nobody? Philly? What time is it? Well, we got like half hour or 20 minutes. Let's have a couple of questions. Yes?
I'm just wondering, why do we obsess so much, like, about anything, about like people, about ideas? Why do we just spend so much energy just focusing ourselves on the same things over and over, like, all the time?
Well, I think first of all, it's very difficult to be self-sufficient from a very young age, because you have to be like, if you're born to be a pianist, there's a good chance that from the age 2 onwards, you're going to spend like 6, 7, 8 hours on the piano just practicing. That makes you very self-sufficient. But none of us are that. The piano makes you, the piano breaks you. It's not your mom, it's not your dad, it's not your friends, it's not the TV. It's the piano and your ears. Every time you hit the wrong key, every time you realize that you're dealing with a music sheet that's very complicated, they make you or break you. For most of us, we are made or broken by our parents, by our siblings, by our relatives, by neighbors, by friends. So we live in the eyes of other people for a long, long time. And there's a good chance that you and I will never be self-sufficient, because we depend on affirmation, confirmation of other people on the outside. And when they reject us, it hurts us. I go on Rate My Professor every single day. You guys know what that is, right? I go on there every single day. And whenever there is a negative comment, I call the center. And I cry and I scream. I want it to be deleted. I want all of my marks to be positive. Why? Because I value the idea of an 18-year-old about me. How pathetic can that be? It's pathetic, but it's true. Okay. The other thing is, if you go back in time, and I'm talking about like the Stone Age era, Paleolithic tradition, 80,000, 90,000 years ago. In our DNA, there is this knowledge. The world is dangerous. People are dangerous. Life is unstable. Have a checking account, have a savings account. Because at any time your job could be taken from you. So all of a sudden you realize, well, the Christians are wrong. You have greed because of evolution. Human nature demands pleasure. Why do you have lust inside you? Because pleasure is good. Now what kind of pleasure, that's a different story. And the world is like a toy shop, man. There are all sorts of wonderful things out there. By the time you realize that perhaps the most important thing you need in life is maybe your health, or maybe enough money to buy a nice little coffin from Costco, you've accumulated 1,001 different things. Now, you covet what other people have for one simple reason. Well, what they have looks good. What they have smells good. What they have beautifies your life, at least imaginatively wise. Why the hell do you go to school? You see all these other people working for Google and Yahoo making tons of money. You say, well, I want some of that. That's coveting. That's lust. And the truth is, it protects your life. The idea of self-reflection is your midlife crisis. Go out there. Make millions, billions of dollars. Be cruel to anybody and everybody. And then at a certain point, hopefully, 40, 45, 50, sometimes it's imposed because a parent dies that you loved so much, or a pet dies, and your life is pushed on pause. And then you reflect. Now, depending on your temperament and how distracting your life is, it could either be like a Gilgamesh. You love someone or something so much that its loss puts you in this depression mode. It's deep, and you can't get out. And then you begin to evaluate your life. And that's baptism through fire. And you will never be able to go back into your life. It's like you're married, okay? And no one in your family has ever divorced, but your relationship is really abusive, and you get divorced. And something about it just cracks open like a dam, and you will never marry again. But most of us cannot forget. And so regardless of what the trauma is, it's short-lived, and you go back to being your old stupid self. Can I tell you a story? Jacob Needleman used to teach at San Francisco State University in the philosophy department. He's dead now. He also ran the Gurdjieffian Center for many, many years, a couple of decades. He told a story some years ago. He was interviewed by Bill Moyers. He was invited to see the takeoff of some space shuttle in the 1980s, I think. So he said that we went into this room, everyone was sitting, drinking coffee, saying stupid things. Then all of a sudden, the voice of Walter Cronkite. You guys know Walter Cronkite was on ABC or NBC or one of those channels. It was a big guy with a mustache. His voice, man, oh my God. It was like the voice of God, And so his voice all of a sudden, 3, 2, 1. And Needleman said, all of a sudden, all of us, useless, loudmouths began to quiet down. And we saw this space shuttle, this piece of God, fire underneath, and went up. And all of a sudden, our mouths began to open. And then we saw this thing go up. And then it disappeared from everybody's eyes, and everybody got up very quietly without making any sounds. They held the door open for other people, very respectful. And then 10 minutes later, all in the cafeteria, just being their old stupid self. And the point is, we have all these moments, all of us do, where we are forced, for some strange reason, to kind of look at life and look at the whole thing as an absurd exercise, and you want to walk away from it, renunciation. But because it was just an inspired moment, you weren't really trained for these moments, it kind of goes away very quickly. But don't worry, your time will come. You're still young. Go out there and accomplish. Envy, and be greedy, and be lustful, and be passionate. There is a saying in Persian, "Yek sal bukhor noon o tare, baqish bukhor noon o kare." Butter used to be very expensive in Iran, but vegetables very cheap. So eat bread and vegetables for 1 year. Save your money. And once you've saved it, then you have enough to buy 50 blocks of butter. Now you can enjoy butter for the rest of your life. Right now you're young, you have lots of energy. School, job, money, house, lots of savings. And then when you realize everything is useless, your foundation is set, it's concrete. You have education, you have money, you have savings. You want to walk away from the whole thing? Go have a good time. Be like the Buddha, it's fine. Walk away from life being rich, not being poor. Always have the upper hand. Don't be stupid. Not you, I'm just in general. Anyone else? Maggie? You sure? Philly? Kendra? Both? Alexis? Doubt? The opposite of doubt is certitude. You know. Knowing can be theoretical, or it can be seasoned with lived experience, and then reflection, and then understanding. You know, I don't know how much I understand the statement from Chuang Tzu, the Chinese Taoist philosopher, that the sword or the light of a good student is doubting. Doubting removes assumption, doubting removes arrogance, doubting removes your imagination and fantasy that other people are good and right and honest and decent. Doubting creates awareness, mindfulness, just being alert. I think the most important doubt is this component that says, don't trust. You're not there yet. Don't be too certain. It's too early. It's too soon. Now, the problem with that, even though it's a really, really wise statement, at a certain point, you need to close your eyes and say yes to the marriage. You can't doubt your companion or yourself because you're going to be 90 and Kaiser all alone. Our desire for certitude also suggests that we have access to the future, which we don't. So everything that we do in life needs to have an element of doubt in it. And when you become aware of the doubt, you're basically saying to yourself, given what I know at this point, I'm going to say yes. There are going to be moments in life where I'm going to doubt my saying yes. She wants to do philosophy, forgive me. Okay. Now, she wants to do philosophy at the age of 34. Nothing wrong about that. She can finish the whole thing, a PhD by the time she's 45, and she has like a good 30 years in the classroom if she chooses that particular path. Okay. She may choose that path, come to realize perhaps going to San Francisco, the instructors there may suck more than they suck at Laney College. Now she's going to doubt. Was this the right choice? I am not young, I'm 34. Do I really need to put myself through this? And how many jobs do you actually get in philosophy? How many job postings? 1 every 5 years. Is it worth it? Probably not. Should she doubt majoring in philosophy? Absolutely. Should she do business, which is a bit more secure? Definitely. But she should do business, on the side, do philosophy. So doubt and certitude can go hand in hand. Business, computer science, she'll get a job. It's very doubtful she'll be happy. Philosophy, she can teach part-time. She can suffer from 9 to 5, have a good time 6 to 9. I think doubt is really, 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 really good. It brings about a good amount of humility about your own understanding of things and other people. Again, the world is dangerous and all the people in it doubt everything. I don't know. But I think needs to come a time where, despite the fact that you doubt, you put your foot forward.
Can you talk about good love versus bad love? Or is that even one?
Well, there is stupid love that ultimately becomes bad love.
Before you answer, is there such good lust?
Lust. You can't lust after anything that you haven't experienced. And you can't be greedy for anything that you haven't experienced. And you can't covet anything that you haven't experienced. You must have experienced something. In other words, your senses must have been exposed to something that gave you pleasure. And now you want more, because that's what lust is. You want more of it. And greed is about securing your lust in the future. I don't want to trouble myself to go to Safeway at 10 at night to get ice cream. I am greedy enough and have the resources to buy 50 bags just in case my lust for ice cream comes about. My greed will be satisfied by going to the fridge. It's there. Okay? So remember, every culture, because of its set of advertisement, creates lust for everybody. But the lust that John the Baptist had is very different than the lust that I have. The lust that Bill Gates has is very different than the lust that he has. Okay? Because in every human being, you have a different set of desires. Experiences that create their own unique set of lusts, greeds, covetousness, and all that. Okay? Maybe the best way to approach your question about love would be the following. You have a love that has a good amount of experience behind it, and you have a love that's innocent, that has no experience, but a good amount of inspiration. Experience removes inspiration. It's what we talked about in Confucianism. Let's say that you're 18 and I'm 18. You and I meet somewhere and instantaneously we find ourselves attracted to each other. It's your first time and it's my first time. We don't really know what to do with the eruption of all these emotions inside you or me. Okay, all I know is that I like you, I love you, and you the same. It's inspired. Zero understanding. Intense brain chemical reaction to the experience. I write you poetry, you write me poetry, we do all sorts of things. Eventually, our love gets tested by life and the complexities of life. And how long does such a love last? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Let's just say, and this is not like 50 years ago where we meet each other and we get married, 10 years later we're in love. That's a solid foundation. Okay. And this particular experience creates all sorts of narratives, right? You're going to get married, you're going to have 50 kids, you're going to live in this beautiful place. Okay? None of those things work out. And it's not just our relationship that filters out and kind of slowly dies. The narratives, the fantasies, the story, the dreams are on the future. The future dies as well. And it's devastating. It's going to take you 2-3 years to recover. You're going to go out. Because nobody wants to be alone. And all of us in this class have the zest to live a life. You go out there and you want to meet someone. But you've been touched. Not by love. You've been touched by life. You've been given experience. It may be that you will be inspired in your second relationship as well. That this will be an inspired love relationship. But it'll be 50% love and 50% fear, doubt, hesitation, understanding, not full understanding. Now, given the way most of us are, most of our experiences happen to be unresolved, undigested, right? And so you're going to go into your third relationship. By this time, you're like 40. You know yourself really, really well. You know the complexities of life really, really well. You know how men are. You become much more self-sufficient now. And that's what, again, being broken does. In pain, you're always alone. If you're able to sift through the garbage, you'll become self-sufficient. If you can, you just become depressed and sad and lonely and broken and undigestible for anyone. Now at the age of 45, you're relatively healthy with a good amount of brokenness in the past that have been processed and digested and understood. Now you go to Pete's Coffee and we meet. What are you going to ask at the age of 45? You're attracted to me, I'm attracted to you, but you're not going to fall in love. You're far too smart, insightful, and mature for that. Practical questions. Are my feet on the ground? Are my parents? Are my siblings? Do I have a job? Now this is a love worth having. It doesn't have much fizz in it. I'm not going to write you poetry. There's a good chance I'll probably forget your birthdays too. Yeah, you're not going to travel. But you can sit and watch a good movie every single night. And when you're going through difficult times, like you have a temper tantrum of sorts, I'll just keep my mouth shut. I'll be a nice punching bag for you for a couple of hours. Don't mind that. Yeah. And some people, like anything else, they just get lucky. They fall in love, inspired love, and it lasts a lifetime. I don't know how that happens. May I just finish this class with a story? It's not about love, it's about something else. What time is it? Good. Let me just tell you a story. There is this flower in the Persian world. It's called Gul Muhammadi. And it has its roots in another flower, the tulip. Gul Muhammadi is a very, very tiny rose. The stem has thousands of thorns on it. And if you want to, with your fingers, climb up to reach the flower itself, you have to be poked with all these thorns. And it's going to be bloody, but you have to be okay with that to reach the tiny flower. And it smells beautifully. And there's a reason why it's called Gul Muhammadi, since you're talking about love. In the Islamic tradition, what it means to be human is the following. When God creates us, or created us, our hearts are red and they're bloody. And at the very center, it's black. It's black, it's burnt. And why the heart is bloody is because of the burning sensation. Now, why is it burnt? It's because God put his finger right at the very center of your being. And that's where your happiness lies. And that's where your love lies. In other words, you will always have a bloody, broken heart because you will always be looking for love in the wrong places. That's a good love to have. Self-awareness, self-realization, what the Hindus and the Buddhists and all these isms call this the kingdom of God within. But I think for us, Confucianism is the best. Find a good man or a good woman. Get some kids. Look for a house. Live out your life and then die. That's life. Forget all the self stuff. Anyone else? Go ahead. No? No one? Oh, yes, Talia. Good job. So listen, it's good to see you. Take care. I will see you tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, bye.